In the Pacific Ocean, the world's most powerful supercarrier is gearing up for action.
The deck of an aircraft carrier is one of the most dangerous places on Earth.
It must prove that it can launch.
Boom, they shoot you right off the end for the best roller coaster ride of your life.
And land its strike force of jets.
Continuously landing, continuously launching. It'll be busy.
Both day and night.
2051, glide path comfortable.
To be ready for combat.
If you're not scared, then you're crazy.
When things go wrong, it's a very unforgiving environment.
Blowing this $4.5 billion monster apart, we'll uncover its technological secrets. From a hull designed to withstand torpedo attacks, to high-pressure catapults that launch jets into the air, and a landing system that works in the stormiest seas. We'll reveal how this extraordinary aircraft carrier evolved to rise above all other machines. In the port of San Diego, an elite crew of 4,400 men and women is setting out into the Pacific Ocean. Their mission, to train for naval warfare. To do this, they need an extraordinary vessel. Weighing 88,000 metric tons, powered with 2 nuclear reactors, and carrying a strike force of over 40 jet fighters, the aircraft carrier USS Ronald Reagan is America's flagship.
It's a little city, at over 1,000 feet long.
Captain Chris Bolt is the man in charge.
We do everything on board. We're self-sufficient. We don't need to stop for gas. Our nuclear power allows us to go for almost 25 years without refueling the reactors.
Heads up in the LA, we'll short phone the 3 alpha wires, still up here.
This mighty carrier can deliver American air power anywhere in the world. She's a colossus, born and bred for battle. Her steam-powered catapults launch aircraft into the sky at more than 260 kilometers per hour. In her belly, 4 nuclear-powered steam turbines drive her through the waves. 2,000 steel compartments make her nearly unsinkable. Over 1 million parts joined together to make the Reagan one of the fiercest fighters on the ocean.
Come left steer course 230I, sir.
The USS Ronald Reagan has just spent a year in dock for maintenance. This is the first time all her aircraft are back on board. In the next 24 hours, Captain Bolt must train his new crew for active service and get America's flagship ready for action.
The plan for today is to qualify 40 pilots. So that's 40 air crews and multiple types of aircraft. So that's what we're trying to accomplish today, and that'll be both day and night.
To keep the Navy pilots battle ready, they must pass regular qualifying tests, demonstrating their ability to land on a ship.
There's only a handful of countries that actually do what we do, and we do it the best.
One of the pilots who must qualify today is Lieutenant John Lape, call sign Shipmate.
I've been flying in the United States Navy for the last 3 years. The last year and a half, flying the F-18 Charlie. It's been the best time of my life.
This is Shipmate's first time underway on board a carrier. He will be judged on his landings, known in Navy slang as traps.
Today my mission is to go out and achieve carrier qualification. And what that involves, I need to do 2 day traps, and I also need 2 night traps.
A lot hinges on these tests. If shipmate fails to qualify, he will be sent ashore to retrain and may not be allowed to fly on carriers again. It's 12 noon. The 24-hour mission begins.
All right, Adams shouts out of the holes. Head up to the bow for a FOD walk down. It's that time again. Let's head up to the bow for a FOD walk down. Bring a FOD, bring a friend, do not bring any FOD.
FOD stands for Foreign Object Debris. Tiny objects that could blow into and damage aircraft. Before shipmate can take to the air, the crew must remove all FOD from the hangar bay floor and flight deck.
If a FOD could go into an engine of an aircraft, just one little screw that someone forgot to pick up, it could possibly damage the aircraft, and it could cost the United States Navy a lot of money.
Only when the deck is clear can the Reagan begin flight operations.
Copy, 2 at 19, ready tractor is good, Tilly is a cranking.
Set for day, sir.
JBDs?
1, 2, 3, 4, online.
Hey, Triple F.
There you go.
Commander Joel Becker, call sign Vegas, is the air boss.
I'm almost like the maestro of an orchestra.
An experienced Navy pilot with over 600 carrier landings, Vegas will direct the qualifying flights from primary flight control.
Everybody has to work together, and my main job is to make sure that they're working together and then try to stay ahead of dangerous situations.
Before Vegas can get his fighter aircraft into the air, he needs Captain Bolt to push the carrier up to launch speed.
We are pretty fast. Each aircraft that takes off or lands has a certain amount of wind over the deck that's required. So we need to be able to go fast enough to make our own wind all the time. We have to be able to get above 30 knots, you know, almost 40 miles an hour pretty quick whenever we want.
To reach this speed, the Reagan has 4 propellers that push her through the ocean. But the ship is so large, they need the help of a unique bow design. Borrowed from nature. In the 1860s, the shape of a swan inspired a British engineer to build a ship with a bulbous bow. It created less drag than traditional designs, which saved fuel and made ships faster. The Reagan stretches this bow design to the size of a house, piercing the waves ahead of the hull. It plows through water faster, giving the ship the critical speed it needs to launch planes.
Depending on whether we have natural wind or if the ship is having to make wind, we generally want about 20 to 25 knots over the deck.
Today, the wind is only 5 knots. To get the plane safely into the air, the carrier must make up the difference. Captain Bolt turns the USS Ronald Reagan into the wind and cranks up the speed.
Approximately 10 hours at this speed, sir.
The Blue Blaster's squadron ready room, 90 minutes before takeoff.
All right, guys, welcome. We're gonna go ahead and get a quick CQ brief, get everybody's minds caged so we can go out there, get a couple good bounces in.
An experienced officer briefs junior pilot shipmate on the dangers of his flight.
We'll go through emergencies and safeties and anything out of the ordinary that might happen.
If the launch goes wrong, shipmate's life hinges on him ejecting before his plane crashes into the sea. He will have only a fraction of a second to react, so it's essential he knows the eject drill backwards It's called the Emergency Catapult Flyaway.
Once we get taxied up to the JBD, shipmate, what do I want you to be doing?
We want to go through our ECAP flyaway.
Go ahead and go with ECAP flyaway.
Throttles max vertical against yaw roll, emergency jettison button push, maintain 10 degrees pitch attitude with waterline signal, do not exceed half lateral stick, unable rest yaw roll, stop settle eject.
Perfect, man. That's got to know that just like that, just as fast. Junior, you got.
Like all Navy pilots, you don't get near a $50 million jet without having the right stuff. 1 p.m. The first pilots are set for takeoff. To launch the aircraft, the Reagan's engines go into overdrive. In the heart of the ship, steam from the nuclear reactors pushes the turbines to the max. They deliver the power of 60 freight trains to the massive 7-meter-high propellers, thrusting 88,000 metric tons of carrier to more than 50 kilometers an hour.
Who thinks they got Charlie? Call it Tower Sagan.
In the next 3 hours, the Reagan's crew must launch 80 aircraft.
There's tension. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Call it Tower Sagan.
In the Pacific Ocean, America's flagship, the USS Ronald Reagan, is gearing up for action. To get her ready for combat, Captain Chris Bolt needs to qualify 40 pilots by the end of the day.
We're not going to take time out because we have so many pilots to get qualified. We're just going to continue into the wind and let all the pilots just keep going around, get some more. When they run out of gas, we sideline them, fill them up with jet fuel, put in a fresh pilot, and then do it all over again.
Copy, 120 mile bingo, thanks. It's about to get very, very busy. This is kind of the quiet before the storm.
The first aircraft takes off. The 10-hour marathon begins. The 40 pilots will take turns in the 13 planes used for qualifying. Once in the air, the pilots make a left turn and line up 2 kilometers behind the ship.
To land. That's a direct entry. He'll be coming around to land.
As they come in to make their qualifying landings, experienced pilots watch their every move and grade their touchdowns. 30 minutes before his launch, junior pilot shipmate kits up. His life will depend on this equipment if the launch fails.
This right here is our parachute harness. So if we do have to eject, this is what we actually connect ourselves to the jet with. And then within the vest, we've got our flashlight, we've got our radio, some flares, some smoke signaling devices, everything that we would need.
Shipmate mentally prepares as he heads to the deck for launch. It's a procedure he's rehearsed in his head hundreds of times.
I'm gonna jump in, get everything started up online, and then that's when my heart starts pounding. I'm getting ready to taxi out to go get a cat shot.
Taxiing to the runway through the chaos on the flight deck is no simple task.
There are moving jets everywhere, jets that have exhaust blowing. You've got spinning props, spinning rotor blades, and then not to mention the multiple personnel involved with moving everybody around. So one thing you got to make sure you do is watch your aircraft handler and follow your taxi director around so that those yellow shirts are out there to keep you from running into another jet, causing huge catastrophic damage to that other aircraft.
All right, boss, can I get a status on 2?
To take off, the F-18 would normally require a runway at least 500 meters long. But Shipmate only has 100 meters. To reach his launch speed of 260 kilometers per hour, he relies on help from the carrier.
The shuttle's going to come up, the shuttle's going to take the launch bar, and they're going to seat it in there properly, and then they're gonna put me in attention. That's when your heart really starts going. So then they pass you off to the shooter. Shooter's gonna tell you to run it up. You come up on the power. You wanna make sure your flight control system is good to go. That way when you come off the end of the cat stroke, you're gonna be able to fly away and you're not gonna have to eject. Okay, there's my flight control set. My engine control set. I'm gonna salute the shooter. He's gonna return the salute. At that point, you're along for the ride.
To launch the jets off her deck, the Reagan uses an explosive invention. First sketched by Leonardo da Vinci 500 years ago. The steam cannon. A fire at the back turned the barrel of this gun into a red-hot furnace. Just a few drops of water would explode into steam, powering the cannonball out of the gun. The Reagan has two pistons hooked up to the jet. They sit inside a pair of 100-meter steel tubes. Steam shoots the pistons down the tubes and catapults the jet to 260 kilometers per hour.
Your left hand's up holding the throttle, your other hand's holding the towel rack, and then boom, they shoot you right off the end for the best roller coaster ride of your life.
The catapult fires shipmate into the sky with a G-force greater than the space shuttle. On board the Reagan, the flight deck crew scrambles the rest of the aircraft. It's a hazardous job. 35 sailors have died in flight deck incidents since 1980.
The deck of an aircraft carrier is one of the most dangerous places on Earth. When things go wrong, it's a very unforgiving environment, and we've all lost friends in this business. A line on the deck, you know, on this side of the line, you're safe. 6 inches on the other side of the line, you know, the wing of an aircraft can kill somebody.
Once pilots have landed at the back of the ship, they must make their way to the catapults on the bow to take off again. Flight deck control.
Copy. Let's go ahead and set off on one.
Handler Al Guajardo is in charge of the flight deck. He must guide the aircraft to the catapults so none of them collide.
With carrier qualifications, you just gotta have your head on a swivel at all times because they're just continuously landing, continuously launching, continuously landing, continuously launching. It'll be busy, at least until 2300 tonight.
Examiners will assess how well the pilots perform the most dangerous of all carrier operations. Landing. 1 hour into the operation, 9 hours to go. The second batch of pilots start to land. Pilot John Lape, call sign Shipmate, is 10 minutes away from his first landing. The Reagan's landing strip is 10 times shorter than a normal runway. To land planes, the ship catches them with special wires. To catch a 17 metric ton jet plane, the Reagan's wires must be strong and flexible. They borrow a design honed through 300 million years of evolution. The Darwin's bark spider makes the strongest biological material known to man. Glands on its belly create tiny filaments that it spins into a single thread. Its twisted structure makes it strong and flexible, perfect for catching large prey. Just like the spider's web, the arrestor wires on the Reagan are made of many twisted strands. Steel fibers are spun around a flexible plastic core. to make a wire just 4 centimeters thick, but tough enough to stop a speeding jet.
We have 3 wires that are strung on the flight deck. The 2 wires, the hot wire, that's the target wire for the aircraft. That's the wire that they are trying to hit at all times. But we have 1 and 3 there just in case they happen to miss.
LSE, shocks and chains, spot 7. Black Knight LSE, shocks and chains, spot 7.
Pilots need incredible skill to catch a wire.
You're taking one of the most powerful pieces of equipment on Earth at about 150 miles an hour. Their margin of error is 2 feet, meaning if they are 2 feet off center line, they're going to start hitting my folks on the deck, or they're going to start hitting machinery. So it's one of the most precise types of flying in the world.
Today, the qualifying pilots are flying 2 types of F-18, the lighter Hornets and the heavier Rhinos. The ship's landing equipment must bring both types of aircraft to a stop in exactly the same distance. To do that, the arrestor wire weaves over 300 meters through the carrier, down to the arrestor engine. Here it pulls a steel piston into a huge shock absorber, pushing hydraulic fluid through a slowly closing valve. The valve fully shuts when the arrestor wire has moved exactly 104 meters. This brings the speeding jet to a complete stop in just 2 seconds. In arrestor engine room 3, Petty Officer Carissa Clark checks the arrestor engine. To catch a jet safely, the operator must set the engine with the aircraft's weight in pounds.
What we're catching today are actually Rhinos and Hornets. So that's between 36,000 for the Hornet and 48,000 for the Rhino. And once that's set, all of this will go green, and we're ready to catch an aircraft.
If it's set wrong, a heavy plane could snap the wire.
Once we've actually caught an aircraft, we need to retract the cable. Sometimes within 30 seconds to a minute, we have to be able to get that engine ready to catch the next aircraft.
To qualify, junior pilot shipmate must make 2 landings in daylight and 2 at night. He is just minutes away from his first landing. 3 arrestor cables stretch across the deck. All pilots aim to catch the center wire. It's not easy. Shipmate lines up his F-18 behind the carrier.
If you're not scared operating behind the back of the ship, then you're crazy. Everybody is scared when they're doing this. Everybody has their nervous tension.
This is his first attempt to land.
It's unlike anything you've ever experienced. You're coming in, your heart's racing, you're sweating. All you want to do, you just want to land.
Copy.
That last little bit's a blur. Everything comes so fast. The deck comes right up on you, and then the hook catches the wire. It's just this jerky motion and throws you forward. It is unlike anything you've ever experienced before. It's like a car wreck on steroids.
Shipmate just catches the last wire on the deck. He's safely down. If he had missed all 3 wires, he would have had to fly off the deck and go around for another attempt. 1 daylight landing down, 1 to go.
Right away, they're gonna pull you back. You're gonna go right out and do it again.
He taxis to the catapult for his second launch. But at the back of the ship, there's a problem. One of the arrestor cables is wearing out.
We inspect the cable every day when we man up. So if we have 3 broken wires on that entire cable, we have to change that cable.
If the cable snaps for whatever reason and the aircraft keeps going off the bow, that's a lost pilot.
The USS Ronald Reagan is on a mission to qualify 40 pilots for carrier operations. Junior pilot shipmate takes off to make his second qualifying landing. But there's a problem. An arrestor cable that catches planes is worn. The flight deck crew race to replace it.
They're changing the cable that's on the flight deck. It should be a 2-minute swap. Should be, if we're on our game.
Shipmate is waiting to land. If they don't change the cable in time, he will have to fly around again.
As soon as they're done, it's gonna cut right back in. No breaks, no pause at all.
The crew fixed the cable, just in time for shipmate's second landing. This time, he makes a perfect touchdown.
All right, what do we got? Rhino, Roger. Set for the Rhino.
With his daytime landings complete, shipmate is halfway to qualifying for carrier operations.
I did pretty well. My first pass, I caught the 3-wire, and then coming around again for my second pass, I had a little better pass and caught the 2-wire. Definitely an improving trend.
It's one thing to conduct a training exercise in peaceful conditions, but the USS Ronald Reagan must be able to launch and land planes in the thick of battle. To test his crew, Captain Bolt is about to put the ship under simulated attack.
We're a warship, so we train to go to war. We simulate being under attack from multiple sources: air attack, submarine attack. And how do we stop, fix it, get going fast again, continue with flight objects?
This is the TAO. Set general quarters. Set general quarters. Noon air contact. Set general quarters.
All hands making battle station.
The attack exercise begins. All sailors must head to their designated battle stations and fight to defend the ship.
Clear that hatch behind you!
Chief Petty Officer Tom Carr assesses how well the crew perform.
Right now we're in a general quarters drill. These guys don't know, but this space is gonna also get blown up. I think it's part of the plan, and then we'll see how it goes.
It's hard enough now, but it would be even harder if your enemy were trying to kill you for real. They must be prepared for a torpedo ripping a hole in the hull.
This is the TAO. Missile inbound. Port side. All hands ready for shock.
If a torpedo causes the ship to spring a leak for real, her giant belly could fill with over 300 million liters of water. To keep herself afloat, the Reagan uses ancient technology. For centuries, junks were the engines of the Chinese economy. But a single hole in their hull could end in disaster. So boat builders fitted them with watertight wooden walls, called bulkheads. This way, a leak could only flood a small part of the ship, so it would stay afloat. The Reagan takes this idea to the extreme. In her belly, steel bulkheads the size of a house form gigantic watertight compartments. Together with the other bulkheads on the ship, they hold back crushing waters and ferocious fires. So the Reagan stays afloat in the heat of battle.
Flooding at 7. Yeah, we gotta go to the pumper.
To protect the ship from flooding, the crew must seal all the ship's 2,000 watertight compartments in less than 12 minutes.
These are watertight, airtight hatches. They're absolutely paramount for the survival of this area. You wouldn't be able to open that unless you had permission. There could be a fire on that side, of flooding, anything, and just cracking it a little bit could let those elements in.
There isn't an armor system invented that's actually going to prevent a torpedo from entering your ship. The fun part is, if it enters a ship, it only floods that one space that it goes into.
The crew have sealed all the hatches with time to spare. Mission accomplished. Exercise over, the crew return to normal duties.
You're loaded.
4 p.m. The 40 pilots have almost finished their daylight qualification flights. But an aircraft carrier must be able to fly planes round the clock.
We'll go for the next several hours until the sun sets, and then we're going to go right into night flight ops, and we'll go almost till midnight and see if we can get all 40 of our pilots qualified.
All right, boss, look for status on 2.
It's a big ask. The whole crew will have to be on top form. To qualify, shipmate must prove that he can land at night. The most dangerous part of the operation is about to begin. To wage war, the USS Ronald Reagan must be able to launch fighter aircraft both day and night. All 40 pilots have successfully completed their daylight flights. But to qualify for carrier operations, they must now do it all again. Only this time, in the dark. Junior pilot shipmate needs to make 2 nighttime landings.
We're the only service that'll go out and fly at night around a ship.
That's where it's really scary, especially if you don't have the moon, you don't have any illumination.
The Reagan must be able to operate in near total darkness to prevent enemies detecting her at night.
Clarify motive. 112. Roger.
The lack of visibility means shipmate is banking on the carrier's equipment and crew to get him safely into the air and back on board. As he taxis his aircraft out for his first night launch, he relies on the deck crew to guide him safely to the catapult.
Nighttime does bring an extra added level of difficulty. At nighttime, you're not gonna be able to see hand signals, so we use wands.
Shooter Kirk Prescott needs to make sure he knows when shipmate is ready for launch.
You're not gonna see him salute at night, so their way of saluting is they'll turn on their lights, the navigation lights, and sometimes the strobe lights will come on, and that's our signal. Hey, they saluted, they're ready to go.
Shipmate takes off.
205. Well left of course, correcting rapidly. 205. Way up.
He's about to make his first night landing. It's probably the most difficult maneuver any pilot has to make.
Approach 205, needle shows on.
Surrounded by an ocean of darkness, shipmate relies on the Reagan's air traffic controllers to guide him back to the vessel.
Pretty much we are the pilot's eyes in the skies during bad weather, lightning storms, thunderstorms, hail. When they are coming back from their mission, sometimes the pilots may be tired, fatigue setting in, and we're basically telling them exactly what they need to be doing to ensure that they're safe in the air.
Each pilot has an aircraft number. Shipmates is 205.
205, flight heading 220. Roger.
The plane appears on the radar display.
The little dot right here is the aircraft. The carrier is right here. This is the edge of the flight deck. So right now the aircraft is correcting to make sure he is directly aligned with the landing area of the carrier.
Final bearing 313. Roger.
Right now he's directly on glide path.
The glide path is the aircraft's line of descent to land.
The final control will be telling him he's on glide path, on course.
205 on glide path, on course.
At that point right here, it'll tell him he's at a mile. Lets the pilot know he's about to land.
205, 1 mile on glide path, on course. 205.
He's good to go, and now he's directly aligned with the ship to land. At 3/4 mile, he's going to tell the pilot, 3/4 mile, call the ball.
205 on glide path, on course, 3/4 mile, call the ball. 205, right on ball.
The ball refers to the meatball. an ingenious landing light. Shone from the side of the runway, it will guide shipmate down to the deck. At the heart of this landing system for pilots is an invention originally designed to save sailors' lives. In the 19th century, lighthouse beams were broad and couldn't reach very far. So a French engineer built a new type of lens with concentric rings. This Fresnel lens focused the light into a bright, narrow beam that sailors could see from 30 kilometers away. The Reagan's landing system uses 12 lighthouse lenses to create a stack of narrow yellow beams. The pilot sees one of these beams at a time, the meatball. When he's on course, the meatball lines up with the horizontal green lights. If it appears above them, he's flying too high. If it's below, he's too low. The meatball must line up perfectly, or the pilot is in trouble.
205 on glide path on course, 3/4 mile, comfortable. 205.
He's good to go. That's where the LSO will take over. And essentially right now, the LSO and the pilot are the only ones that are going to be talking until he lands on the flight deck.
On the back of the ship, the landing signals officers, the LSOs, will once more grade shipmates' landing.
Roger, auto, 28 knots. Roger.
That's where it starts getting really scary because everything you see is black except for the runway lights themselves.
Going a little high. Roger. When you're on, glide slow.
Shipmate makes a perfect landing.
Came in for my first pass. I cut the 2-wire.
He's bang on target. He has done well so far. Shipmate hooks up to the catapult for his second and final launch. He needs to catch one last wire to qualify.
Hey, final bearing. Final bearing 313.
He comes in to touch down.
205 on glide path on course, comfortable. 205.
He's missed the wires. Shipmate has failed to land.
205 on glide path on course.
On his last attempt to land his F-18, junior pilot Shipmate missed all 3 wires on the USS Ronald Reagan. In Navy slang, he did a bolter.
Once you get a bolter, you're just like, oh no, what happened? You play that pass back in your mind. Whether you added a little too much power in, you start getting a little anxious. And so from there, you're able to analyze, okay, let's make this pass a little better.
Shipmate must go around and make another attempt to land. The pressure is on. In flight deck control, the handler keeps a record of every bolter.
The rookie pilots is what we call nuggets, and if I see a B up there on a regular basis, that normally means that he's a rookie pilot. A B means that he boltered. It means he missed the wire.
For Shipmate, it's now serious. If he continues to miss the wires, he may fail to qualify. What makes landing on an aircraft carrier so difficult is that the deck of the ship moves up and down with the heaving ocean. To touch down safely, Shipmate relies on the landing light's extra layer of technology. If the landing lights were simply fixed to the ship, they would pitch up and down with it, making the beams of light move and the system useless. So on the Reagan, the lights have stabilizers. Small motors swivel the lenses against any motion of the ship, so the lights always point in the same direction. This allows planes to land safely, however rough the sea. The ship rocks slightly, even in tonight's calm conditions. The gyro-stabilized landing lights should help shipmate touch down.
205, approaching glide path, right of course. Roger.
After his bolter, shipmate approaches for another attempt. This time, he touches down safely. It's a huge relief.
Definitely glad to get back onto the ship. Night flying is nothing that anybody wants to go out and do. I just got a little low coming into glide slope and then added a little too much power and went right back around for another try. But it happens to everybody.
205 on glide path on course, comfortable. 205.
Shipmate's final landing qualifies him for carrier operations.
I'm qualified to go out now and operate safely around the ship.
The crew of the USS Ronald Reagan has accomplished its mission. All 40 pilots are now qualified for operations on board.
We definitely knocked off some rust. It's been a little while since the Ronald Reagan has conducted some flight operations, but we knocked off the rust and we're starting to get to where we look like a finely tuned machine.
Brilliant. They've been very efficient. My compliments. We count it as a win if we can just have several hundred takeoffs and landings and nobody gets hurt, nothing that touches something that it wasn't supposed to touch. That's pretty impressive all by itself.
The USS Ronald Reagan is now ready for action. On call to deliver its strike force of jets anywhere they're needed.
We don't know where we're going to be needed in the world, and most soldiers on the ground love to hear the sound of strike fighter engines zooming overhead. That makes them feel good.
Steaming at 55 kilometers per hour. Launching and landing aircraft around the clock. To qualify its Navy pilots for combat anywhere in the world. The USS Ronald Reagan is a formidable engineering giant. It's all thanks to a bulbous bow that speeds her through the waves, high-pressure steam catapults that launch supersonic jets, nuclear-powered steam turbines that thrust her across oceans, advanced gyro-stabilized landing lights, and steel wires strong enough to catch fighter planes. It's these technological marvels that have helped this aircraft carrier evolve to rise above all other machines.